Estevao has finally been announced as a Chelsea player, so in today's video, we're going to be going through how to get the best out of Estevao in Enzo Maresca's system, how to manage his minutes and the expectation that comes with his big move from Brazil, but also the dynamic he could have with one of Chelsea's other stars. We already know about the youngster's unreal ability when it comes to his ball striking from outside and even inside the box, and also his close control in tight spaces that enable him to beat players on the dribble, but also with that first touch to make things stick and precise in the final third. But it's all of these skills combined that attract so much attention from the opposition defenders, which will free up space for other players on the pitch. His ability to manipulate not one, but two defenders at once, dictating attacks and then finding his way into the box or dumping it off to another player is what makes him so unique in the particular role that Enzo Maresca will want to use him in. Estevao himself said, "I like to dribble, create and help my teammates by drawing opponents towards me to free up space or by getting them the ball when they're under pressure. I like contributing in terms of goals or assists." And I think this could give us a big clue as to how Enzo Maresca has envisioned Estevao in his system. Okay, now we're on the tactics board, which is the JLA tactics board, and it is now available to the public. So I will be leaving a link to this in the description. If you want a tactics board, there's so many different settings that you can use to, again, like showcase everything that you want to showcase. There's so many good tools on this, and I will leave a link in the description for you guys to check out yourselves. But in today's video, we're going to be talking about Estevao, and as we've already spoke about, how he can we can get the best out of him this season in Enzo Maresca's system. So as you can see on screen, this is basically within that 3-box-3-3-2-4-1 system. And Estevao more so to be playing on that right wing. But we're going to speak about not only how we can get him into the sort of the channels like on the right wing and being that touchline winger, but we're also going to be speaking about how you can get Estevao into those middle sections in the middle of the pitch in this sort of right half space, a bit like with Cole Palmer, and then how the connection between both Estevao and Cole could work to get them rotating within those zones. So if you enjoyed the video, please do leave a like. There was some good support on the previous videos as well. So yeah, let's get into it without further ado. So how can you get the best out of Estevao? In my opinion, especially this season, you've got to be careful with how you manage his minutes. And I think a good way to manage those minutes is to not only play him alongside the likes of Pedro Neto, Gittins and even Garnacho when he comes in as that right winger, but as those touchline wingers, of course, Gittins and Garnacho being more for that left side. But you can also allow Estevao to come into those inside pockets. So the first way of using Estevao is, as I've got on screen, you've still got your touchline player with Bino Gittins. You've got Estevao who can play as that touchline player, but again, you would then be able to have that dynamic between Cole and Estevao, which I think is really exciting. So if we sort of talk about Estevao, that's not very good, Estevao and Palmer in here, and how those two can work. What you could see quite often is Estevao drifting into that pocket that we're talking about, which allows Cole Palmer to drift out. And that rotation between the two allows you to still occupy that width, but also this zone in here as well. So you want to still make sure that at any one time, they are still occupying those lanes, but you can have that sort of crossover between the two that Estevao has basically said that he wants. He wants to play in that right half space. He wants to play as basically a number 10 in central areas. So being in that right wing, it can allow Palmer and him to sort of rotate. And again, they can find space out wide to challenge their man 1v1 and find those 1v1 isolations, draw men towards them. But it can also allow for, again, in that pocket of space, can they sort of create and be closer to goal, which is something I think Estevao wants to be part of as well as Cole Palmer. Now, with that, you've got Cole Palmer, who's kind of your primary creator, and in this sense, Estevao would be your secondary creator. Now, one thing that I'm going to speak about in terms of the minutes distribution, like I said, one sort of how he's probably being viewed right now is in the same sort of category and group as the wingers. So the winger group being Estevao, Gittins, Neto, and then Garnacho if he comes in the door. However, with someone like Xavi Simons also looking to come in, I think that the likes of Cole Palmer and Xavi Simons, I think Estevao will be quite heavily involved in their sort of minutes distribution and getting Estevao into those pockets, because I think Chelsea will see him as more of a creator and somebody who can sort of take that workload alongside Cole Palmer as that secondary man to draw players away, make it harder for him to be man-marked, and to really run the attacks through them. Because Cole Palmer is that currently for Chelsea. Can you add more players around him to take that load off? And I think that's what Estevao is going to be. So therefore, do you see Estevao playing as much or being kind of in that same group as Xavi Simons, because if Xavi Simons is in this area, then you probably don't want Estevao out on the wing as well, because then you have three primary creators. So what you, or like primary slash secondary creators. So what you'd actually then see is what I think would be Estevao maybe not playing if Simons plays and vice versa. Now, that's not to say that later in games you couldn't have all three of them sort of inside in that pocket playing sort of a like this, how we played last season at times, where you've got a 3-1-3-3. I think that could be something that you see, and sort of that 3-1-6 with three players in the pockets. That could have Estevao in one, Palmer in the middle, and then Simons over here. What it would mean is Simons is technically off the ball as that sort of that secondary midfielder alongside Casado if you didn't have Enzo Fernandez there. So it would depend. Maybe later in a game, Fernandez would go off in like the 70th minute if you're trying and struggling to break it down a team, and then you bring on Simons or vice versa with Estevao, and you can have all three of those players occupying that sort of central space, and really, again, having all three creators to sort of find these runners off the ball. So maybe you'd have the likes of Delap, Gittins, and then maybe Gusto in those areas to really attack the last lines as such when you've got those three creators in there. So I think that's important to notice with Estevao. Now, of course, his goal catalogue speaks for itself. He can play from the wing in and of itself and be in that area. So if we put the team back to sort of how it was beforehand, if I quickly do this, Estevao can just operate in this spot and he can just draw players towards him. Again, in the quote that we said earlier, he likes to bring players and sort of drag multiple men towards him. So if he can drag multiple markers and get double teamed, he's then able to dump that ball off to Cole Palmer and they can find an overload between them in that space of the pitch. Whereas Estevao, in this sort of back end of the pitch, he's sort of doing his job by drawing men away and then passing the ball off, like I said in that quote earlier for Estevao. So that's definitely the best way to use him in terms of allowing him to be that creator. But also, when he's on this wing, I think that there's two sort of ways that you can use him. You can use him as that that central sort of outlet in terms of the ball going into him. Let's say he's in that Palmer role. Let me turn this off. Let's say he's in that Palmer role in the middle of the pitch, and that ball is going into his feet. He does have the ability to sort of, again, secure that ball and wriggle out and make something of it. But where Cole is sort of a little bit sort of taller and a little bit longer limbed, and in that sense he's a little bit harder to sort of get off the ball, he's a bit more press resistant with his back to play. What you could see more often, again, which is why I love the idea of Palmer playing in the 10 and Estevao playing on the right to have those rotations, is that you can still have them pop up in either zone, but their start points allows Palmer to be more of that sort of outlet to get that ball, but also he can make those runs into here to receive that ball in here. Or Palmer stays away, Estevao is able to drop into here to receive a direct pass, because again, Reece James inverting, he is basically cutting off this lane here and bringing one of the opposition wingers infield to open up that passing lane into Estevao. Now, when he receives the ball facing forward, again, we're talking about Estevao as a creator, he then has a really nice field of view to be able to spread play and attack the pitch from here. And he has the passing range, but also, like we said, the dribbling quality to almost draw men towards him. And Palmer can make those runs in behind. He can make those runs into the centre. You'd have someone like Delap who's willing to run into the channels. And it gives Estevao sort of the best foundation to get the best of him, in my opinion. So that is my thoughts on Estevao in the team and how you can get the best of him. Basically playing as either a number 10 or a right winger, a little bit like Xavi Simons on the left side, where he can sort of do this role, but you also want to be getting him into that right half space as often as possible. And Palmer and Estevao really could be a perfect combination as a two-man sort of link up where they can both operate in each other's zones for that zone replacement that we've spoke about in the past, with someone like Reece James who can anchor behind them, but also at times, if need be, if Palmer drops in, there's points where Reece could even push ahead of Palmer. And yes, Palmer's not sort of that deep line playmaker, or at least if that ball breaks, you've not got that same sort of protection. But he is somebody who likes to jump into these zones so that he can sort of spread the play and pick the passes, as we know he likes to do. So I think it adds a lot of versatility to that right-hand side, having Estevao in there. But it is all about easing his minutes and rotating his minutes between not only the touchline wingers, but also those inside number 10s with the likes of Cole Palmer and Xavi Simons. So, how excited are you for Estevao to be at Chelsea? Let me know all of your thoughts on Estevao, how you think he'll do this season, what you think about how he should manage the expectation and his minutes, and how you think he'll do long term at the club. Let me know all those things, all the questions you've got down below. Drop a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.